好，我们今天讲业果相续啊。那业果相续还是要在复习之前的啊。我们说我们佛性本来空无一物啊，无相。那因为一念妄动，那产生我们叫做产生无明能所啊。那接下来虚空世界众生业果。
Today's topic will focus on the perpetuation of retribution in accord with karma. Before we start getting into today's topic, a brief review of that needs to happen first. So, as we have discussed many times already, our Buddha nature, originally it's devoid of any form or intrinsic characteristics. But because of one deluded thought, gives rise to duality, subject and object. Furthermore, then it gives rise to the notion of space, world, sentient beings, and karma.
本来这个虚空世界还有我们众生，我们所看到的都是在我们心中，但是我们现在的经验我们是觉得身体是我，那我的心是在身体里面。那其他的世界是在心外的
So the space, the world, sentient beings, originally the way it should be is they are all phenomena inside our mind. But our everyday experience tells us otherwise, that it tells us that the body, our deluded thinking tells us that our body is me. We equate the two, and that the mind is inside the body and the world is outside of the mind. These are delusions.
在那个见识的样子就说为什么我们的心还是见恶还是见识，应该是可能是见恶，就是我们的见性不昧还是什么不思就讲到就是为什么我的心会在身体里面就变成妄心那不管你是觉得心在身体里面，那其实还是什么我们的身体还有我们这个世界是在我心中那一旦我们觉得身体是我，那心在身体里面那我们就把都是心中的东西分成心跟外境，那这时候就有什么，就外境合一不合一，然后产生贪跟嗔的
In chapter 4, or perhaps in chapter 2, one of those, when we were discussing the seeing nature is not lost, or maybe in a section where the seeing nature does not perish. The sutra goes into extensive discussion about why we have this delusion that the mind is inside the body. That is that deluded thought thinking. The reality is all phenomenon is in the mind. But because once we have given rise to the delusion, then we feel the mind is inside the physical body. Then we further make divisions of the mind versus the external world, the external phenomenon. Once the external phenomenon is established, and furthermore, there will be situations where the phenomenon goes according to our liking or it's not favorable, and that will lead to greed, desires, or anger.
那我们这一个业果相续那当然就是我们刚才讲说什么无明能所然后虚空世界那我们再取这个微量的小四大，就是精子卵子变成胚胎，然后 然后变成什么？以这个小四大所成的身体，那就变成我了啊。那当然这里面是有什么？有那个我们在投胎的过程啊。上次不然我讲到这个部分哦，就是跟我们有缘的父母，然后你就投胎进去了啊。那这边啊就有什么杰罗兰，就是你的胚胎第一个星期叫杰罗兰啊。第二是第一个月啊这样子啊。然后一段时间，第二段是什么解普谈啊，反正就是不知道几次啊，就是不同时期的那个胚胎的变化。
So regarding this perpetuation of retribution in accord with karma, so it all originated starting out from original, there's nothing, the Buddha nature is devoid of any characteristics. But because of delusion and ignorance, then it gives rise to duality, subject and object, thus space, world, etc., etc. And from there, we become attached, grasping onto a small subset of the four primary elements. And we take that as our physical body. And from there, we become the embryos. And the small subset of four primary elements becomes the physical body. And then we take that physical body as the self. I think we went over this last time. At the point of conception, you encounter parents that you have affinities with, and then your consciousness enters the embryos, and that becomes a new beginning of a new life. Over here, there are a few terms, the Kalala stage and our Buddha stage. These are all referring to different periods of gestation. I think it's first month or first week or so, so on and so forth.
记得在圆觉经有讲到，就是众生妄认我们这个四大为自身相，还有什么六层缘影为自心相，那就有妄有什么流转啊，也就是说我们会流转，就是把这个身体当成我，那把我们的信念当成，把我们那个什么。我们信念的那一些会起伏的这些什么六层当成我的心哦，那就这样子，那就把这些生命的现象当成我了，所以就变成叫希望流转。
In the Sutra of the Perfect Enlightenment, there's this phrase that says, sentient beings, which is us, we mistakenly take the four primary elements and think of that as the self. And then we take the six sensory objects and the six sensory consciousness as our mind. And because of these deluded understandings, then we start to, we're stuck and be reborn in the cyclical cycle.
那我想大部分的人呢，都是把身体当成我，那身体以外的当然是外境啊。那一旦把身体当成我，那我们大概我们生下来就是大概有两个力量嘛，一个是什么？要让这个身体一直存活就是说要活命啊。那就身体的命活了以后，我们当然还要活得舒服啊。比如说，不要太热啊，那不要饿肚子啊，那不要身体就有这个什么领导仪啊，所以就有这个种种的什么，为了活命而去什么，去取得我们叫什么食物、空气、水啊。另外，我们的六种感官也要看美色美声所以只有统括叫什么？也要活命跟活得舒服，那就是 都在努力这两方面的哈。
So most of us, we take the physical body as a self, and anything that is not the physical body as external environment, external phenomenon. Basically, we are driven by two forces. The first primary force is the need for survival. And then once that need, the basic need of survival is met, the second force that drives us is the desire to be comfortable. So we don't want to be too hot, we don't want to be too cold, we don't want to feel hunger, we don't want to get wet from the rain. And in order to survive and to survive comfortably, then we seek food, air, water, and then to maintain our physical body, we want to look good to other people, and then we seek all sorts of sensory stimulations in order to feed into survival and surviving, living comfortably.
总而言之就是什么？就是我们的佛性啊，就是佛性是觉性或是空性啊。那这个它有两个特质啊，就是积而常造，造而常居啊，造而常居。那我们不是以这个为我的啊，我们是以这个觉性产生的那个什么生命的那种，就是我们叫做世心啊，或是妄想心为我啊，这边叫攀缘心为我，那这个我们就开始流转了。
So whether you call it Buddha nature or the empty nature, there are basically two characteristics. That first one is quiescent at all times, yet it has the function of illuminating. And it can illuminate, yet at the same time it stays still and quiet. So these are the characteristics and functions of our Buddha nature. But instead of seeing that and treating that as the true self, instead, we grasp onto our conscious mind, that the conscious mind that rises and ceases, arise and perish. We can call it the conscious mind or the wandering mind, the deluded mind. We mistakenly take those as our true mind, the true self. And because of this mistake, then we are stuck in the cycles of rebirth and death.
今年讲说想爱同结啊，爱不能离，则诸世间父母子孙相生不断嘛。这个爱应该有，就是爱这个身体啊，就爱，等于是你希望这个身体，你爱这个身体，或是把这个身体当成我啊。那我希望这个身体可以一直活命啊，就不能像是什么，像那些禅师他们说，他死了哪里都不去啊，那哪里都可以去啊。但是我们很多人是，若夫妻就是什么，就是感情很好，那很多人就希望就什么，能够继续做什么妻是夫妻啊，那这个就是爱的力量啊。那这么力量的话，让我们的什么，我们的生死相续啊。
The sutra, the text says, beings bind themselves to each other with their thoughts of love. Love so strong that they cannot bear to be apart. And thus there come into beings all the world's fathers, mothers, children, and grandchildren in an uninterrupted succession of birth. So over here, thoughts, the first character is thought. And the second character is love or emotional love. It's this attachment, this love and attachment to the physical body. We treat the physical body as a self, and that will feed into the need to maintain this physical body, to survive, to live. And because of this delusion, and that's why we're not able to be like the patriarchs. The patriarchs has said that once upon death, they don't go anywhere, but they can go anywhere. That's not the way we think or we feel. Conventionally, there are sayings where maybe a husband and wife or a couple, they are so enamored with each other that they vow to, they wish that they can continue to be a couple for the next 7 lifetimes. Such is the power of quote unquote love. And because of this love and this desire, that leads to the continuation, perpetuations of life and karma.
也可以说就是什么，我们会生灭不断，最主要就是我们抓起这个身体为我啊，那想活命啊，那另外当然除了活命以外，我们也要什么，就是怎样，就是避免就是被什么身体被杀害啊，所以就是变成一个我们说动物的本能啊，就是什么。就是繁殖跟什么，跟逃避什么，逃避就是被吃掉，背后是被杀。
This perpetuation of life, successions of birth and death. We take this body as a self, and thus there's a need to survive, to live. And because of that, we try to avoid harms at all cost. And that's why we talk about animal instinct. The basic instincts of animals is reproduction and to escape being eaten, being harmed. So the fight or flight responses.
我上次在这个什么，在 LA 的样子啊，那碰到有一个《中国时报》的一个总编辑，他是就已经退休了啊。那他们就跟我分享了说他们《中国时报》啊，还有《联合报》就被好像《苹果日报》啊打得落花流水啊，因为《苹果日报》很懂得人心啊，他们就专门看那些什么暴力跟色情的啊，实际上就是等于是这两者又是彩色的。那为什么呢？因为这是就是人啊，或者动物啊，最能够引起他注意力的两种新闻啊。
I remember last time when I was in LA, I came across an ex-editor of a newspaper. I believe the name is China Times, or maybe another newspaper. And he was telling me that these newspapers had a hard time competing with another paper. I think it's called the Apple Journal. And the reason why the Apple Journal is able to be so successful is because they have a very good understanding of the way human beings desires. We crave violence and sex, and these things tend to grab people's attention most easily. And that is why by focusing on these type of articles, the Apple Journal is able to succeed in and becoming the winning journal.
他说就是主要的是什么？裸体跟尸体啊，就是因为裸体就是可以繁殖嘛，那尸体就会要你的命嘛，所以只要有哪个地方，比如说谁被杀死啊，或者说比如说我们在那个什么 7-Eleven 啊，有人在这个什么礼包包下毒啊，那我们就会特别注意，我们就不要去那一间了。所以这种最容易吸引大家的注意的就是什么？就是我们最原始的欲望，因为我们想要活命嘛。那活命的话，就避免死亡。所以只要尸体的，我们都看看是不是在什么，在我周遭发生。因为我们也不希望我的身体变成尸体啊。然后我们又要繁殖，所以看那个美女啊、男女的那个没穿衣服的话，大家都有兴趣。
So basically what he said is it boils down to nudity and corpse. Nudity is related to our desire to reproduce. And corpse, for instance, people want to know what's going on around them, whether there's going to be hidden danger, such as news of such and such 7-Eleven, the people have put in injected poison into the drinks. So those you want to avoid. These are all related. They stem from our most fundamental primary desires of reproduction and survival. So the reason why I said it boils down to nudity and corpse is the corpse will tell you whether your surrounding is safe or not, and tell you to avoid certain dangers. The nudity is related to reproduction. People want to see it because it's related to one of their fundamental human desires.
也可以讲说，就是什么，都比较核心，就是什么，用后念去回应前念吧啊，那就是等于是用后念回应前念，就是用我们叫做能守啊。那因为能守就创造你的身体跟外境啊，那又想要活命嘛啊，所以这个能守就是四心啊，四心就不断了啊。那所以这一个有能守，然后你又要想要活命，那就等于是你爱这个身体，实际上就是让这个能守一直相续啊。所以他们讲说什么这个以贪为本啊，那贪爱同知啊，贪不能值得世间什么，这个就是等于是就继续相续就对了啊。
The core of all these is basically we are using our second thought to respond, react, or interact with the prior thought, with the first thought. When we talk about second thought, first thought, this is relating to the way that the mind with duality, subject and object, operate. Because there's subject and object, then we feel there's the distinction between the physical body, which is the self, versus external environment, external phenomena. This mind that operates with subject and object is synonymous to the conscious mind. So when you combine the deluded mind of subject and object with the desire to survive, it becomes a grasping of our physical body. And this is what perpetuated this continuation of physical body. And that is why the text reads, the root of all this is emotional desire. Because of excessive desire and emotional love, all craves nourishment, a craving which will not cease.
我看到现在有很多人有什么濒死经验的哈，他们有濒死的经验以后啊，他们一个是不怕死啊，那一个是很热爱生命啊，这是一个啊，那一个就是什么？我们禅修啊，禅修如果你做到什么身体不见的，这个外在世界不见的啊，乃至于虚空粉碎了啊。那你就知道这个身体就是工具啊，真正的我佛性不会死啊。那这样的人，他们对这个身体的看法啊，就变成身体是工具的。那否则的话，我们就是一直爱这个身体，那希望这个身体一直活下去啊，乃至于死了以后，你那个想要活命的那个心事还会继续投胎啊。
So I have read accounts of people when they have near-death experience. And the result, when people have such kind of experiences, what came out of it is, this is what I've observed, that one, they are no longer afraid of death, and they become, they live their life very proactively. That is one. For people who are who sit in meditation, who have entered a good state of, who have good experience of meditation, when they experience the disappearing of physical body, and sometimes even the disappearing of the external environment and space, where when these empty spaces completely shatter, that's when people will start, these meditators, practitioners will start to realize that physical body is merely a tool. It's a tool for us to practice. The Buddha nature will never die. Body is a tool. And so there is no need to grasp onto this tool. Without such understandings of the true nature, then we continue to grasp onto our physical body, and we are driven by desires to perpetuate this, continue this physical body. And this happens even at junctures of death. And that's what leads to the endless process of rebirth.
那我们可能还是要从头再讲，就是说我们佛性本来什么东西不是嘛？那一旦有这个什么能守西方世界，然后众生，我们变成佛代为人啊，然后就什么，就有一个想要活命，要活得舒服的这个力量在主导啊。那这一个想要活命，这样就是我们讲说是什么？他们有些人叫自体爱还是什么啊？就是你希望这个身体能够处在一种活命的状态，那主要是认为身体是我，那不晓得就是说身体是被你感知的一个波浪啊，那包括你这一个什么，这个世界也是被你感知的波浪啊。那我常会讲说，如果你睡觉的时候，你这个世界啊，还有你这个身体基本上是不见的啊。
So we have to start from the beginning again to go through the sequence. So our Buddha nature is devoid of any intrinsic characteristics. And because of diluted thought, it gives rise to subject and object, thus giving rise to space, world, sentient beings, and karma, this desire to perpetuate our life. And once we grasp onto our physical body, then there is this desire to survive, the wish to live comfortably. This drive to survive is, some people call it a grasping or a love of the self, a physical body. And because of that, this need to survive, then we wish the physical body will continue in a way that's comfortable and unharmed. And so the way that this goes is that the problem is that we don't realize that the physical body is merely a wave on the ocean, just like the world. All the phenomena in the world are also waves in the ocean. And the example I keep using is that when we fall asleep, when we shut off our contact with external phenomena, both the physical body and the world falls away. And so this is to illustrate that they are just like waves.
上次有看到那一个什么，就泰国这个阿姜曼啊的一个传记啊，那他描述说有一个老妇人啊，也是跟着阿姜曼禅修，那修得很好啊。然后他很喜欢他可能一个子女吧。结果他在进入禅定的时候，他就发觉他的心事有一个东西就跑到他子女的子宫去了，也就是说他很爱他，就这个心事在他禅定比较深的时候，就看到他的一个心事跑到他子女的子宫去，也就是说如果他死了以后，他可能就变成他的子女的一个什么儿子或是什么女儿。那阿姜曼就讲说，你一定要把这个断掉，否则的话你就变成你的子女的这个儿女了。
I was reading the biography of Ajahn Mun once and read in the biography of a story of an account. There is a lady, a woman who has been practicing meditation under Ajahn Mun's instruction for a long period of time, and her practice is very good and solid. And so, but this woman favors one of her nieces. And one day when she was deep in samadhi, in meditation, she saw her consciousness. It's like there's a thread of thin thread of consciousness going from extending out of her, going into her niece's uterus. And so after reporting this to Ajahn Mun then said to her, you have to stop this. Otherwise, once you pass away, it's very likely that you will become your niece's son or daughter.
这边是一直强调这个爱跟贪嘛，这个然后相生不断啊。那这个十二因缘里面也有一个就是什么触受爱取有嘛，就是你碰触你心有碰触那个对象，那产生感受，那再从感受再产生乐受，产生爱，对不对？那苦受产生嗔，对不对？乐受再产生什么？不是产生爱，然后爱就讲的是执取啊，那执取就有什么生活一个行为啊，那这个部分都是什么？都实际上就是后念缘前念啊。那比如说你后念缘前念，那这个我们这个生命就不断啊。那一个是触，那另外一个是爱啊。所以我们如果要断这个生死，就断两样东西啊。一个触就是无明啊。然后那个爱嗔就是相续的心。
So what this part is trying to emphasize is that our desires and love and cravings, they feed onto each other and perpetuate each other. Similarly, in the 12 dependent origination, it also explains the sequence of contact, sensation, desire, grasping, becoming, birth, old age, and death. So it goes through a very similar sequence. So because of love, then we come into contact with objects, thus giving rise to sensations and feelings. When the sensations and feelings are favorable, pleasurable, then we grasp onto it. Otherwise, we give rise to anger or hatred. And from there, that leads to grasping or rejection, and further on leading to actions. So what this whole sequence really boils down to this concept of the second thought incessively keeps trying to grab onto the first thought, and this when this operation is perpetuated, that gives rise to birth and death. So if we want to be free and become liberated, what we really need to do is to cut off this part with contact and love. Because of contact, it gives rise to ignorance, and the love gives rise to the wanting to continue, the perpetuation. So to end these two will lead us toward liberation.
那以我们的经验啊，比如说我们爱啊，或是嗔啊，那肯定有一个你爱的对象，或是你讨厌的对象啊。那我们一般人呢，可能应该就不知道啊，你爱的 对象其实是你自己啊，也是你的东西。那你第二念要爱的时候，前一念的爱的现象已经没了，这个一般人可能不知道啊。所以就有点像我们说旋火轮啊，你用心啊，用一根香，那在黑夜里面绕回眼前，那个眼前已经消失，你觉得还在，那你就跟他互动哦。啊，比如说你跟外境互动，可是其实那个外境已经消失了，但是我们喜欢，那就会产生第二念，那第三念再喜欢第二念啊，它其实是爱不到的哈，但是我们的经验上可能没这样想过。
Based on our experience, we have love and hatred. When you have love or hatred, there must be an object of your love or an object of your hate, of your anger. The problem lies that we do not know that the object of our love or our craving is ourself, it's our Buddha nature. So this lies in this interaction of the second thought and the first thought. The second thought manifests the phenomenon of wanting to love an object, but the object that it's trying to love is the first thought, and the first thought has actually already perished. So the object of love is already gone. So another analogy I use is this concept of turning a light in the dark and drawing a circle in the dark with a speck of light. So you think that there's really a circle there, not knowing it's just specks of light. When you move on to the second place, when the light moves on to the second place, the first one is no longer there. So wanting to love something is the mind is merely interacting with the external phenomenon, not knowing that when you try to love an object, the object is already gone. There isn't anything for you to love.
所以我们在什么等于是在什么这个等于是生死相续啊，那基本上就是就可以用做梦来讲了哈。做梦中的境界全部是你，但是我们自己会划分其中有一个是我，那其他是外境啊。那你不晓得都是自己变现的啊，那就这个梦境啊，就有贪啊、嗔啊，那让你跟梦境相续，那等于相当于时间相续。那我们现在其实啊，我们一般人叫做什么？叫做晚上叫梦，那白天是什么？白天是要生死大梦哦。那么一般并不知道，也就是说，我们爱的对象实际上是我们心中的东西啊，心中的牵念。
So with regard to this perpetuation of life and death, we often we use dreams to illustrate the way it works. And so when we're dreaming, all the phenomena in the dream is created by our mind. It's the self. Yet amidst of all these self-created phenomena, we make the division, we draw a line and separate that into the self and others. And because there's this dichotomy has been established in the dream, then in the dream, you have feelings of greed and anger. And further on, the story goes on in your dream and the world is perpetuated in your dream. And so at nighttime, we call it a dream, but we actually work the same way in the daytime as well. So sometimes in Buddhism, we said during the daytime, we're dreaming the grand dream of life and death. So it's still a dream. So this relationship between second thought and first thought, when you want to hate an object or a person, an object, or love that object or person, that that should be considered as the first thought. The first thought is already gone. There's no object for you to attach your love or hatred onto.
好，那这种贪爱啊，那我们说，我们看看那些动物啊，我听说动物，有2只公猴啊，就是会厮杀啊。那如果谁赢的话，那他就有什么？就有2个什么，就食物优先享用权，还有交配权哦。所以那就是什么？就那个力量哦，就是应该可以讲说是把身体当成我想活命的这个力量而产生这些什么？我们说这些深夜口业的行为哦。
So greed and love. So we can look at animals. 2 male dogs, they fight to be the alpha dog for hierarchy. And whoever wins gets a first dip of the food and the female dogs for reproduction. So basically what's happening with the dogs is, again, they take their physical self as their physical body as the self. And then because of the attachments and the drive for survival and reproduction, then it gives rise to karma of the behavioral karma, the body, speech, and mind karmas.
所以这边这个什么，我们说这个卵化尸胎啊，就是各种各类的生命啊，也是动物啊，就是还有呢，就是把身体当成我，那因为他们的食物是可能是以我们叫肉食的食物嘛，那它本身只是想要活命的而已啊，它倒不是因为好吃不好吃啊，可能也有，不过最主要是什么？就是什么？那以肉食，那就什么？就互相残杀啊，你吃我，我吃你啊，那主要的是想让自己的什么？生命继续活下去哦，所以这个它就叫杀贪为本哦，就是杀就是肯杀了这个另外一个动物，那我是贪爱我的什么？我贪爱我的生命，所以这边讲杀贪为本。
So in the text it says, born from egg via metamorphosis in the presence of moisture or from a womb, devour one another or in turn devour each according to the measure of strengths and weaknesses. And the root of all this is the desire to kill. So the dogs, for example, they take their physical body as the self, and they're carnivores. They eat on or omnivores. They eat each other and devour each other as food. Right here, we're not sure about whether there's a craving for good tasting food or not, but the basic need is for survival. And because of that, then it perpetuates this cycle of devouring each other and killing and greed, all for the purpose of perpetuating life and for survival.
那刚刚这边是以杀贪为本嘛啊，贪爱那是杀死对方嘛，这可能贪自己的生命。那这边是第2个是什么？以人食羊，羊食为人，人食为羊，如是乃至世间之内，世生生互相相啖啊，恶业俱生，穷未来俱，是等则以道贪为本啊。
So right here, it's talking that this part of the text is about the root of all this is this desire to kill. And then the next part further explains that suppose then that a human being eats a sheep, the slaughtered sheep is reborn as a human. When the human who ate the sheep dies, he in turn becomes a sheep. This pattern holds among all 10 kinds of beings as they devour one another in a continuing cycle of death and rebirth. The evil karma of this mutual devouring accompanies each of them from life to the furthest reaches of the future. The root of all this is the urge to steal.
我在大概可能20年前呢，我们有一个那个等于是义诊的中医师，他专门放血的。他有一次跟一个 病患放血，结果他的身体就什么，就形成一只羊的画面啊，那觉得很奇怪啊。那么放血，结果他那个整皮肤上就糊出一个羊的形状啊。结果一问哦，原来是那个人就是可能撞死了一只羊啊，羊已死了，就不吃白不吃，就把羊吃了啊。那可能羊的神识就走到他身体里面去啊。这是那一位什么这个放血的那一个中医师啊，跟我们讲的。
About 20 years ago, I met a Chinese herbal doctor, and the Chinese medicine doctor, he specialized in this method of treatment, which is letting the blood out to release inner pressure or toxic. And he once came across a patient, and after he performed this procedure to that patient, there's a marking of a sheep emerge onto this patient's skin. And the doctor was very curious and asked about it. And after you trace back for a while, they realized that, oh, the patient has once driven the car and ran into a sheep and killed it. And after killing the sheep, the patient then thought, why not? You know, it's already dead. I might as well eat it. So there's no waste. So the patient ate the sheep. And then perhaps the consciousness of the sheep then entered this patient's body. And then that's why there's this marking of a sheep emerging from the skin when the doctor performed the procedure.
还有在《易经世纪论》呢，我也看过一个啊，就是说你平常喜欢吃鸭子啊，然后那有一天你要死之前，那你的心识啊，就会糊出那个鸭子的形状啊，然后鸭子，那你不自觉要去抓鸭子啊，那结果你一抓鸭子，其实你就变成投胎为鸭子了，等于是你吃鸭子。接下来可能就是换鸭子啊，换这个被吃的鸭子来吃你啊，那可能它变成人了，那你变成鸭子来，就是等于是什么？你吃我，然后接下来换我吃你啊。
I've also read in the Yogacara Bhumi Sutra that there's an account of people who likes to eat duck meat, and the craving is so strong that at the juncture of death, when they're about to die, that person naturally reaches out to try to grab the duck meat, not knowing that the grabbing actually leading him or her to a rebirth as a duck. And once reborn as a duck, maybe originally the duck that was previously eaten by the person is reborn as human, and now it's their turn to eat the new duck. So this kind of cycles goes on and on, one eating another in a continuing cycle.
然后我刚才讲说，你原先你的正报身啊是人嘛，那你被你吃的那个鸭子是你的依报身啊，那它都是在我们的心识里面啊。那如果说因缘果报，有一天你的依报身的鸭子就会变成你的正报身，就是那个心识啊，都是你心中的东西。那本来正报身是吃鸭子的依报身，它到最后变成你的依报身会变成你的正报身，变成你变成鸭子被吃嘛，大概是这样子。
So originally, as a human, your human body is your original direct karmic consequences, and the duck that is eaten by you is the dependent or circumstantial karmic consequences. But all of these are inside your mind. They are of your mind. So and then so in this cycles of eating the duck and when you die, it's very likely then that you're going to grab onto another subset of phenomena and be reborn as a duck. And but these were all original in your mind.
我记得好像 佛陀也曾经有什么？曾经有头痛3天啊，然后还有背痛3天啊。那这一个就是因为他过去是打了一头鱼啊，所以这一次本来是那个鱼本来就是他的医报是被他打了医报身，就这一次就变成什么？变成他的正报身受这个头痛哦。然后这个背痛是跟提婆达多摔跤啊，那提婆达多对他来讲是医报身。可这一次就变成他正报身的那个什么的那种，等于是腰痛啊，这个就全部都是你的东西。那因为因果就是这个什么，就因果的循环，那某些就是本来是医报身的痛苦，就变成你正报身的痛苦。
Even the Buddha in the sutras, there were accounts of the Buddha suffering from headaches for 3 days and also bad aches for a few days. And the source of that headache was in his previous life, the Buddha caught a fish and hit the head of the fish 3 times, and thus rendering a 3 days headache in this lifetime. And so back then, the fish was the circumstantial consequences, karmic consequences of the Buddha in the previous life. But this time, it has manifested and become part of his direct karmic consequence in this lifetime and becoming the 3-day headache. Similarly, with the backache, Buddha was wrestling with Tipo Dato and then hurt his back. Back then, in the previous account, Tipo Dato was his circumstantial consequences. And because of the changing of karma, cause and conditions, and because of the turning of causes and conditions, then circumstantial consequences is then turned into the direct consequences.
这边会讲说你吃我，我吃你啊，那这样子就是什么恩怨就是什么互相果报嘛。那这边后面是讲说什么道贪为本啊，这个应该讲说你偷我的身体吃啊，就等于说我偷你的，我一般人叫偷你的财物嘛啊。那这边是偷你的身体，我们食养上就等于是可能是偷他的身体，那下次换这个羊啊来偷你的身体啊来吃啊，那这个所以这边讲这个解释啊，就是道贪为本啊。
The bottom line of that story was that all these phenomenon were yours. It's all inside your mind, both direct and indirect circumstantial consequences. And here in the text, it talks about human eating sheep and sheep eating, later on reborn, eating human. I eat you and you eat me, and you become each other's direct and circumstantial karmic consequences. You become each other's cause and effect. And over here, they talk about stealing, because you can see eating an animal as stealing their physical body as food. So that's why at the end of this section, it says, the root of all this is the urge to steal. You're stealing the body as food.
我们下面再讲啊，就汝负我命，我还汝债，已是因缘，经百千劫，常在生死啊。汝爱我心，我灵汝色，已是因缘，经百千劫，常在缠缚。
Moving on to the next section. Suppose you are in debt to someone for having taken his life. He will want to take your life in repayment. Due to such causes and conditions, beings must pass through hundreds of thousands of eons in an everlasting succession of death and rebirth. Suppose someone loves someone else for his or her mind, or for his or her beauty. Due to such causes and conditions, being must pass through hundreds of thousands of eons in an everlasting successions of entanglements. 这个里面就是什么？你杀我，那下一次变成我杀你。我记得在禅宗有一个故事嘛，有一个士兵啊，有一天有个将军带着士兵啊，
来要差一个禅师啊，那个禅师在打坐也发现了说这个是之前的一笔债啊，所以他就很这个什么，很甘愿的啊，就跑出来要让他杀啊。那个士兵，其实那个士兵蛮有功夫的，他最后是坐脱力亡啊，就站着死掉啊。但他说他没有办法去制止想要杀禅师的心嘛。那最后，那禅师想要让他杀，就算了啊。那结果这个禅师也就在跟他这个士兵要死之前，先跟他剃头啊，等他等于是剃头，等于是他让他出家啊。那结果士兵就就坐脱力亡啊，就站着死掉。那一个禅师也是坐着死掉啊。反正两个功夫都很好，但是那个士兵能够就是站着死掉，但是他没有办法去抑制想要杀那个禅师的心，应该就是过去式的那种恩恩怨怨。
So you kill me, and in the next lifetime, I kill you. This goes back and forth incessantly. I remember reading a story before. There was a general who led his troop to the temple trying to kill a Chan master. And the Chan master sat in meditation, realized that, oh, this is due to a past debt that I need to repay. So he came out of the Chan hall, standing in front of the general and the soldiers, willing to be killed. And the soldier under the general, who happened also to be a great practitioner, that he's such a good practitioner, he was able to, there's this phrase of becoming liberated while sitting and standing. That is referring to people who has the power to control the manner of their own death, sitting or standing while die and pass away that way. So this illustrates the soldier's capacity with his meditative practice. So the soldier said to the Chan master that I cannot stop this urge of killing you. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop it. And the master recognized the soldier and in the story then helped the soldier to shave his head. And then both the soldier and the master, they both passed away while sitting and standing. So the point of using this story is to illustrate that oftentimes the strength of the karma is so strong. In the case of the soldier, while he's such a great practitioner that he's able to die while sitting, he still couldn't stop his own urge from killing the Chan master. So the power of karma can indeed be very strong.
所以就是说，等于是我们曾经做过了这些什么事，那就是本来是依报生的果的那个现象，就变成以后就变成是什么？你正报生的现象，你杀人的人，你被你杀的那个是你的依报生，对。那某一天，这个杀人的依报生的现象就会发生在你正报生的现象里面去了。
So this explains how our past actions feed into one another. Circumstantial karmic consequences can eventually become one's direct karmic consequences. For instance, when you kill someone, that someone being killed originally has been your circumstantial consequences, external to your physical body. But after the action has been performed over a period of time, through the inner working of the karmic and conditions and cause and conditions, then it can become feed into your direct karmic consequence.
那至于后面这个汝爱我心我邻汝色啊，这个我们可以常常在这些什么也是催眠的的那种 的那个故事发生啊，什么过去世他们可能就是夫妻啊，那这一世又来当夫妻啊。这因为没有时间，我就讲一些故事啊，就是什么这把人名字叫出来不是很好啊，反正就是什么像我们禅堂这个是什么？这是报户的啊。那有些是什么？以前啊，可能应该那个是一个歌星啊，就是那个蔡红坚这样子啊，蔡家红这样子，跟王佑珍的故事啊，我大概简单讲一下啊，就是蔡家红这样子啊，他是一个歌星啊，好像是个歌星，然后他就跟他催眠，然后他说，不知道在什么埃及时代啊，然后他是一个村户。然后有一个等于是附近的一个年轻人把他掳回去当太太啊，10年都不放他回去啊。就有一天他就很生气了啊，就拿了一把刀啊，趁他这个先生回来就对着他先生砍了5刀，砍了5刀以后，然后他们又变成第2世，那第2世好像是在慈禧太后之下的，那他好像是蔡家红就变成。同治皇帝还是谁的啊？算是一个什么这个妃子还是怎么样啊？但是那个时候皇帝很小嘛，他是爱上这个什么，爱上这个皇室里面的一个人啊，他们就眉来眼去的。那有一天就被慈禧太后发现了，那就慈禧太后说好，你们现在，我就参见你们，让你们能够光明正大的你们可以。手摸手了手摸手以后，他们两个人跟王室那个男生摸手以后就推出去斩，就把他斩死了。但是蔡家红就瞄那个太监一眼因为他知道太监告密的那个太监就是这一生就是什么，就是王佑珍那这一次他在什么在交了男朋友那就很有意思了。他交那个男朋友就是什么？他的身体就是有5个疤痕，等于是他那个埃及时代他砍的那个疤痕。然后他说他们2个相爱，就他们2个都不敢什么手牵手就因为什么曾经被杀去砍的那种恐惧
And over here, the text says about loving someone else for his or her mind or for his or her beauty. This part is easy to understand. There are lots of experience that we can relate to, and oftentimes we can. There are accounts of people undergoing hypnosis. Can talk about their past lives and the relationship between what happened now and then. There I've heard a lot, and sometimes it has to do with revenges in this lifetime. I remember hearing this. There's a story of a singer. His name is 蔡家红是男的还是女的？
女生。
蔡家红，she and her boyfriend 王佑珍 and so
对，那个是他的，对，可以这么讲。
先生吗？还是？
他是他那个小三呢。
Okay. Wang Youzhen is someone that Cai Jiahong had an affair with. So Cai Jiahong underwent hypnosis and got hypnotized. And in the process, the story came out that Cai Jiahong once, back in Egyptian's time, was a woman in a village. And a man from the next village came and captured her and took her over to his home and kept her as a wife for over 10 years, not allowing her to come back to see her family. And so eventually this woman got so fed up, then she stabbed her then husband 5 times. And that's the end of that story. And then as the session continued, then the next story that came out was then they were then again reborn during the Qing dynasty toward the end of it, where back then it was controlled by the Empress Dowager Cixi. And so Cai Jiahong, the singer in that life, was a concubine of the emperor. But the emperor was really young. And so as a concubine, that she had an affair. She fell in love with someone else in the royal family. And the dowager found out about it and said to them, I'll consent to that. You guys can hold hands. But as soon as they put their hands together, their heads were chopped off. And then upon the moment of death, the concubine looked around and saw one of the royal eunuch, realizing that it was the eunuch who told on them and eventually killed them. Moving on to this lifetime, so when Cai Jiahong, the singer, met Wang Youzhen again, and it was really fascinating that on the body of her boyfriend, there were 5 scars. And so it's believed that the 5 scars were imprints left from the previous Egyptian lifetime. And they were in love with each other, but they dare not hold hands with each other. And that could possibly be the lingering effect of their lives in the Qing dynasty, where their heads were chopped off because they held hands. 法师好了。
所以我们到最后是什么？为杀盗淫3位根本，也是因缘业果相续哦。这个你先翻好了。
So the last part of the text says, the root of all this are killing, stealing, and emotional love. Those 3 and nothing else are the causes and conditions for the perpetuation of retribution in accord with karma.
就是业果相续，最主要是什么？一定是从什么？世界虚空众生啊，这样来下来，也就是它这个根本就是什么？后念啊，缘前念啊，那这个相续心就会进行了。那我们会把身体啊，本来是我们的佛性本来是不生不灭的，但是你一旦动念，然后产生这个什么，虚空世界，然后有4大的身体以后，那又以4大的身体为我的时候，那这一些身体还有你外在的这些环境的人事物啊，其实都是什么，都是波浪哦。但是呢，因为你把它分自他，那这个自他，那就等于实际上就是用后念缘前念啊，那一个合理的意啊，那你抓，那不合理的一排斥，那都是什么？都是我们叫能手啊，能手的进行啊。那杀，当然你杀人，下次你被杀还是能手的哈，只是什么？一个是原先是正报身，原来是被杀的是依报身，下次的话变成被杀的是你的正报身哦。那这一个反正杀跟淫，基本上它都要站在这个什么，就是什么，就是后念缘前念，等于是有点类似什么？你做梦哦，那你不晓得，全部都是你。结果我们分一个是我，一个是别人，那你用第二念去回应第一念，那这一些什么，那第二念回应第一念，那就产生生活业的行为，那这些什么就这些波浪啊，或者这些相续的现象就一直持续下去。
So this perpetuation of retribution in accord with karma, the root of that, this came after the space, the rising of space, the rising of world, of sentient beings. This is the one following that, the sequence. And the root of all these manifested phenomenon is because the second thought tried to grasp onto or react to the first thought. And this operation of second thought grasping onto first thought leads to the perpetuation of space, world, sentient beings, and karma. And this is all because the delusion. From that deluded thought giving rise to sentient beings, to subject and object, to space, to the world, to us grasping onto a small subset of the four primary elements and claiming that, believing that is the self. Because then we are stuck inside this physical body, thinking that the body is the self, then we further make divisions of phenomenon from the body, the self, versus the external world, whether it's people, a matter, or objects. So we make divisions of the self and other, not knowing that they're all just waves and they're all just part of the mind. And after making the division of the self and others, then we use our mind to grasp onto small subsets of that and react to that. So it's all the root of that is all this notion of subject, object, subject, object, subject, object. They keep going in and perpetuated. So whether this lifetime you kill someone and then you got killed, it's still the operation of subject and object. The only difference is when you kill, then it's your direct karmic consequences. When you got killed, then it's someone else's, it becomes a circumstantial karmic consequences. So whether it's killing, greed, desire, lust, these are all based on the delusion of the second thought wanting to hang on, to grasp onto the first thought, thinking it still exists. So when it's just like when we are dreaming, it's all just phenomena of the mind. They are all waves. There's no point having the second wave reacting to the first wave. These are all just the second thought reacting to the first thought. But because of this delusion, then it gives rise to our bodily action, to our speech, and to thoughts, further perpetuating karmic patterns and leading to further consequences. And these are really all just waves on the ocean. Everything is the mind.
好，我们今天讲到这边，接下来我们开放问题啊，我这个把它弄掉。
So we'll end here today and let's open up for Q&A.
好，那现在就是朱淑宽菩萨，您可以开麦。
法师您好，我没办法开视讯，不过就声音说，就是我想请问一下很简单的一个问题，就是法师今天讲到正报，还有业报，是不是？
不是依报，依报就是你身体是正报，那你身体以外的是依靠身体以外的来活命，叫依报身。依靠的依。
我是想问说，那正报跟业果的关系是什么？
就是说我们的正报跟依报都是你变现的啊。正报跟依报，你就是等于就是对你个人来讲，都是你个人变现的，有点像是你做梦，你梦到你一个人在走，那梦境也是你变现，那身体你自己那个也是你变现，那你自己那个部分叫做正报，那你这一个背景的你的身体以外的叫做依报，你要靠依报才能够什么活命嘛。比如说我们身体是正报，那我需要空气、食物、水，那就什么，你就需要依报的空气、食物、水来养你这个身体。
So the question sought clarification of the concept the Fashi talked about of direct karmic consequences versus circumstantial karmic consequences. And both direct and circumstantial, they are all manifested by the mind, just like in the dream. And so direct karmic consequences is just like our physical body, and the circumstantial is the background. but the direct consequences, karmic consequence relies on the circumstantial for survival. For instance, we have this physical body, which is the direct karmic consequence. We need to survive using air, oxygen, water, etc. And those are considered as circumstantial karmic consequences. And all of them are a phenomenon of your mind.
这样可以吗？
的可以，谢谢感恩法师。
好。
好，下一位，哈利菩萨。
法师您好，我的问题是，刚才法师讲到，就是说我们对这个对象的这个喜爱啊，其实是喜爱自己，因为呢，就像火龙，它前边的已经消失了，因为喜爱，所以它还存在。那这个好理解。那么，如果说到人，那我们比方说对家里人啊、父母啊、兄弟姐妹，那是因为以前有一些业报啊，所以现在才可以在一起。那这种爱哈和这种牵挂，应该怎么处理？其实它，尤其是要在疫情期间啊，我们也回不了家，它其实是一个很大的那个烦恼。对父母的爱也不会说因为学一学这些文字就可以淡了，对吧？所以我就想请教一下法师，这个应该怎么处理
？So the next question is, Fashi, during today's talk, you talked about our attachment to the object of our love. And ultimately, it's really an attachment or a love for the self. This concept is easier to understand, but how do we apply it with people? For instance, family. Family members, we become family in this lifetime because of some past karma. How do we deal with our attachment and love toward them? For instance, we are amidst of a pandemic right now, and we can't go home. So for our love for our parents, our concerns for our parents, how do we handle that? It's easy to understand a concept based on the words, but applying in real life settings, how does it work?
它有一种是什么？就是你爱父母的这个心那你把它扩大去爱因为所有的人都是曾经是你的父母。一个是把这种爱扩大，这是第一个。
So there are several different methods, one of which is your feelings and love toward your parents. You can expand and extend it to all people, because all people had once been our parents. We're all interrelated, so you can expand and extend your love toward everyone.
另外一个就是什么？可能我比喻叫做烟瘾就是很爱抽烟，那个实际上是有类似的就是我们有一个人他一天抽2包抽了20年，那用禅修要戒烟嘛，那他们一般人就是什么？就用意志力精神体力去对抗烟瘾结果是第3天就挂掉了就输掉了那我就告诉他说，你要这个什么，就是玩漩涡就我们在台湾有那个避震有漩涡那你不能跟漩涡对抗，你就是让漩涡吸进去。那就在漩涡，他们就是整个漩涡你吸进去以后，那很快就吸到下面，再爬出来。就玩漩涡的人，那我主要是说，你面对这个爱，那个爱就产生一种感受、想法，想要去抓那个东西抓你的，又想要见到这个人你有一股力量，跟抽烟是有 同样的那种力量啊。那这时候你第一个就是你不要什么，不要抗拒它，也不要什么回应它，那就在这个爱的当中，你去什么？你去比如说我去放松身体。
And the second method, you can treat it sort of like having an addiction to smoking. There was once someone I met who had a serious addiction to smoking, and he would smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day for 20 years. And so when he wanted to do meditation retreat, he had to quit. He couldn't smoke. And so what most people do is they use their willpower to try to suppress it, to fight against that urge to smoke. And usually with that kind of approach, only 3 days, you will lose out for sure. It's not going to work. So instead, we can go the other way. There are people who in Taiwan, in Bitan, they play with the swirls in the lake, in the water. And when you ride on the swirls or on the waves, you don't fight it. You actually go along with it, and you let go and go along with the waves and the swirls. So similarly, when we have love and emotions, it gives rise to feelings and the thought. We missing them, your parents wanting to go see them. These thoughts is kind of like the desire to smoke. And the way we can deal with these emotions is that first, you don't try to fight it. You're not trying to suppress it, fight it. At the same time, you don't follow it. You don't respond to it. What you can do instead is, amidst of all these rolling emotions, you can try to relax your body and observe it.
我这样有没有用？应该是有用的。
有用。我想我的理解看是法师看我是这样理解，就是说这个感受是不舒服了，那就是说不舒服的时候哈，就是安住在这儿，不舒服就让它不舒服了。
这样能够享受不舒服，享受，因为不舒服是波浪，不是我们认为我不舒服。
对。
你就享受这个不舒服。
怎么可以享受呢？
它不舒服应该是感觉，但是你不喜欢，你不喜欢叫做不舒服。就像辣椒，有没有？辣椒是辣的一个味道，并不是好或是坏。你喜欢就是好，所以你这个其实任何现象都是中性的。但是你喜欢，你讨厌，那就变成就会有舒服跟不舒服。
好，谢谢法师。
So Fashi said, I wonder if this will work, will be useful for you. And Hallie said, yes, it's helpful. But Hallie further continued by saying that, let me try to see if I'm understanding you correctly by rephrasing it. So when we have these feelings of missing and concern, worry about our parents, then that feeling is uncomfortable. So instead of fighting it, we should try to settle in that feeling. Should just settle and relax. And Fashi said, furthermore, not just settling and abide in it, you need to try to enjoy it, enjoy that feeling. Because that feeling is just a wave. It's a feeling, it's a sensation. Any feelings that we have is neither good or bad. It's like spicy food. Spicy food is neither good or bad. It's just a sensation. It's a feeling. It's only good and bad when you attach the I to it. I like it. I don't like it. That's when it becomes comfortable or uncomfortable. So just observe and enjoy the wave.
好，第3位是谁？
是我吗？
对，下一位是清净菩萨，然后最后是 Melody 方菩萨。
好，谢谢。
时间有限，大家抓紧。好，
我应该很短。感恩法师的精辟开示哈，也非常随喜赞叹我们同修的用心翻译，我真的很感激。这几堂课下来是非常非常的法喜。那我想说的是说， 听法师的开示呢，主要是就是告诉我们一切是心造，是这个意思吗？啊，
对，
但是也有提到过，这个连修行很有力的行者，仍然没有办法放下执念，就是刚刚那个将军跟那个的故事啊。
对。
所以刚才您呢，已经因为回这个以抽烟这个为例子，也让我也得到一些答案了。但是我想说，还有什么步骤可以帮助我们培养智慧，所以我们可以如理作意呢？就是刚才那个方法也是一个如理作意的方法吧？啊，我就听到了，我觉得非常非常谢谢法师。但是能不能有什么其他的重点，我们还需要再加强？谢谢法师。
是我先翻译哦。So the question is, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Fa Shi for the very profound talk, as well as the translation, for helping me. I derive a lot of benefit and joy from listening to Fa Shi's teaching. And I just want to double check and also further the question. So basically what I'm understanding is, Fa Shi, you said, all your teaching is everything is created by the mind. So is that the case? And Fa Shi's answer is yes, that everything is created by the mind. But the Qingqing Pusa further added by saying that you also use the story of the soldiers to illustrate that sometimes even for seasoned practitioners, it's very difficult for them to fight the urges, the karmic power. So your other explanation of the person addicted to smoking kind of partially answer my question of the steps we can take to fight these urges or to appease it. But I'm wondering, do you have any further instruction of the steps that we can take so that our practice can go hand in hand with the understanding?
如果要跟智慧相应的比较高的比较就近的就是任何现象就是只是现象比如说舒服不舒服那是一个波浪，并不是我不舒服，是不舒服的现象这是第一个各种现象或各种心念，这些现象有，可是并没有一个我不舒服或是我想怎么样，但是有这些现象来，这是第一个那第二个这些现象起来的时候，它已经消失了，但是我们觉得它还在所以假设你呼出一个你喜欢的影像，你会把它当成人，那这个是你的话来说，这个是影像，这不是对方我可以利用这个影像找到对方，可是这个是我存下来的记忆在播放的，并不是对方这是第一个。那但是我们的心，其实你想到某某人的时候，你这个情绪已经起来了那第二步就是什么？这一些情绪起来的时候，你就是什么？你就是只是当一个旁观者，就说你最好是不要碰触它。那如果就是你碰触的时候，就不要什么，不要压抑，也不要什么，不要回应，就两个就是压抑就等于是嗔嘛这个压抑然后那一个回应就是贪就这个相续，那最好是能够什么不去碰它。或者说有时候我们讲说你就什么，你就不要看那个，你可能就把你的注意力拉到身体的放松，但是它原则上是什么？是这些都是你的东西，不是对方，不是人。
So in order to practice in a way that truly correspond with the ultimate wisdom is that you have to bring your vantage point to higher point to the core. So first of all, remember that all phenomenon are just phenomenon. They are just like waves on the ocean. So when there's a feeling of discomfort, it's not I feel uncomfortable. It's not that. There's only a phenomenon of discomfort. You're not putting the I into it. So that's one. The second one is that whenever you observe a phenomenon, that observed phenomenon has already perished. But the problem is that we think it still exists, but it's actually already gone. So, for instance, when a thought of a person emerged from your mind, and this happened to be someone that you like, you have favorable feelings toward, you tell yourself that what came up in your mind, it's just an image that's created by your mind. It's not the actual person. So that is the first level of understanding. And the second level is that usually this all happens really quickly. So we already have emotions that corresponds with the image that came up in the mind. So the feelings that come up, how do we deal with them? Try to be a bystander or an observer, observing the emotions. And the best way is not to come into contact with these phenomena at all, no contact. But again, this happens really fast. If we're not able to practice not contacting the object, the phenomenon, then at least we can try not to suppress it nor responding to it, not following it. Because if you were to suppress it, suppressing is linked to hatred. You're rejecting it. And if you're not responding to it, then the responding part is greed. You want to follow it and continue on. So if you don't suppress and don't respond, then you're avoiding the pitfalls of hatred and greed. It's best not to come into contact, but at least you can try to relax your body and not react to it. Ultimately, it's important to remember that all phenomenon are all yours. These are all just phenomenon. They are not the actual person.
阿弥陀佛，法师。我自己有一种亲身的经历过3次同样的境界。类似就是抽烟那样子的状况，可是我不是抽烟，我是自己陷入负面情绪，
对，
然后不敢面对人群，
对，
然后一次比一次长，
对，
在最近这一次就是这次疫情将近1年多，那法师你刚刚说不要去压抑，不要去回应。那我曾经过，就是说好，那我就看这样的感觉，这样的情绪可以把我拉到什么样程度去。我曾经用过这样的方法，可是有法师告诉我说，你可以念佛号，你可以提前观察到这个念头起的时候，不要让它起。那我想请教法师您的那个方法。
我不建议你先让翻译好了。
谢谢法师。So the next question is, Pastor, I've observed that I sometimes get stuck in negative emotions, and to the point where I'm fearful. I don't want to face the crowd or interact with people. And sometimes the duration of these bouts gets longer. And this time, amidst of this pandemic, has been over a year. And I've tried method of trying to observe it and see where this can take me, but I've also been instructed by other Dharma masters of reciting the Buddha's name, using the Buddha's name to stop the negative thoughts. So I would like to ask you, what is your recommended method then?
我比较不是让念头不出来啊，那个等于是在压抑啊。就念头起来啊，你就知道它只是念头而已。譬如说你害怕，对不对？害怕面对人情，那你就让那个感觉出现。那你看看说，它到底只是一个波浪，只是一个妄念，还是里面有我在怕？那你就让它什么？让它呼出来，但是你没有要压抑，也没有要什么跟。其实以后你就发觉，它只不过是一些什么一些我们叫妄念叫做波浪啊， 生生灭灭的妄想这样子而已。但是你把它当真，最主要是你把它当真，所以你就放松，然后让它播，那你不去碰它，不去压抑，不去回应，这样子。
So my method, I usually don't recommend suppressing it. That's not how I would go about with it. My method is that when a thought arises, recognize that it's only a thought. So for instance, in your case, when you are afraid of interacting with people or meeting the people, just let the thought arise and tell yourself that it's only a wave and it's only a phenomenon. You can try to observe it. Is this a phenomenon, or is there a self in this? Or is there a me in it, or just a feeling? And ultimately, you will see that all of them are just waves, and they're all just wandering thoughts. The problem lies that you take the waves and the wandering thoughts as reality, but they are just wandering thoughts. They come and go. And so let it run through its course. Yeah, just let it run through, and then you can relax your body while observing it.
另外就是你可以看看，就你不敢面对的人你可能看看有没有照片，或是影像，那就你面对一个荧幕上，那你去看它，那让你的感受浮出来。那你是放松，你不要压抑感受，就让它放，看它会怎么样。
Another method related is that you can also try this experiment that with those people that you dare not to confront. You have a photo or a video of that person, play it, put it in front of you, and let feelings naturally arise and emerge, and to let the feelings run through its course.
那我自己，我们有一个人他曾经就是过去是应该是淹死的用淹水淹死的。那他这一生到40多岁都不敢去什么。就是用脸盆装水来洗脸，他说是用什么？用那个喷的那我们最后就跟他引导我说你就全身放松，那你就让你的记忆就是自由的发挥你心中想什么，你不要去压抑不要抗拒，不要压抑。就他马上浮现出一个就是什么？太阳穿透水面，然后它是从水里的角度往上看的一个画面。那我就说你就什么，你就让它继续播。他马上讲说，法师，我的双手跟双脚绷紧。那我说，那你是放松嘛？法师，我想哭他说你就哭嘛。他那时候就是什么，旁边有人他就不好意思哭了接下来他因为这一步引导他去面对他的那个恐惧的那个画面那就总是进了一步以后，接下来他就开始去什么，去把脸盆的水装满，那头就什么，就整个脸浸在这个什么，浸在这个水里面但他只是这样子而已，但是以前他是连看都不敢看那我跟他引导以后，他就敢了。大概试了1年还2年了。其实应该他试到最后，他准备放弃那我说你要放弃也可以所以我想说你又这个水又不用钱所以他就在鼓起勇气果然第2次经过3年左右，他就敢跳进水里面浴缸里面放水了。以前是连看都不敢看这是第2阶段。那第3阶段呢，就是什么？就是他来打我们的禅寺酒最后一个阶段，禅寺酒完了以后，就在外面看戏。那过一次那个浮出来，那到他就解决了。所以就是第一个就是你让你的记忆东西 什么感受浮现，但是你不压抑，然后不跟，全身放松。当你可能会被它拉去，但是你就是这个大原则，不压抑，不抗拒，让它波，那你就会知道说，它到底是只是一个波浪，还是我恐惧这样子。
So, there's a case I can share. In the past, I came across this person who, in her past life, she probably had drowned and died in her past life. And so in this lifetime, she's so afraid of water that she dare not look at water at all. And when she has to wash her face, she can't even let the sink be filled with water. So the way she washes herself is to spray water on her face or to splash water, and that's about as far as she could go. So she came to me and I told her these are the steps to relax your entire body and try to let the memories wash over you. Don't fight it and don't try to suppress it. And then while she was relaxing and doing this exercise, she reported back saying, "Fa Shi, I see the sun shining through the water and I am at the bottom of the water." And I said, "Okay, continue, let your memory play out." And then she further reported, "Fa Shi, I can't move. My hand and feet are bound. Can't move." And then I said, "Continue. Fa Shi, I want to cry." And I said, just cry, go ahead. But because there were other people around us at that time, she was too embarrassed. And so she did not cry. But then she was able to do that, to deal with some of her memories. And that was one step forward. And so what she then tried was then she filled the sink or a bucket with water and tried to submerge her face into the water. And that took a year or two. And that's as far as she was able to go, and she almost gave up. And I told her that it's fine, you can't give up, it's okay. But water doesn't cost anything. You don't have to pay for it, so why not keep practicing? So about 3 years later, that she moved on to the second stage where she's actually able to fill the bathtub with water and take a bath in it. And then the third stage was even later, where she came to a 49-day Chan retreat. And during the Chan retreat at Dharma Mountain in Taipei, there's a practice where we look out at the creek, and then she looked at the water and looked at the creek and let the memories wash over her and eventually resolved her lifelong fear. So going back to recap, the way we went about with this exercise was to first let the memory wash over you. Let all the phenomena arise. You're just observing it. Don't suppress it. Don't follow it. And try to relax your entire body. And of course, the feelings can be so strong that you may be dragged away from being neutral, from being an observer. Again, bring yourself back, relax your whole body, don't suppress it, don't follow it. And then ultimately, gradually, you observe that all these wandering thoughts, that they're just waves and phenomena, and there's not an intrinsic self amidst of these phenomena.
就是说要豁出去了啊！你在那个是豁出去，要怎么样就算了这样子。
So the attitude to have is to just let it all out, just to let go and go with it full-heartedly, and not have any reservation or concerns about what would happen next.
可以吗？
Is this okay?
阿弥陀佛，可以。那法师下一次如果再发生，是不是就去49禅期？
你这个要先试，就是说你放开了，先 先从记忆当中，比如你想到什么人，你就让他浮起来，你不要闪避。那如果可能的话，你去看照片，那你就是看照片，他肯定他不会什么跟你有反应嘛。你先从记忆下手。
So Melody's question is then what's my next step? Do I then do a 49-day retreat? Fashi says you have to first practice, try it out. So what you're trying to do is not to escape from that person, and perhaps it's easier to use a photograph or a video, and just let the memories and the feelings arise naturally and observe it while relaxing your body.
可以吗？
可是法师，我那个境是对所有的，就是家门都不敢出去，所以找不到对象。
你家门不敢出去，你就出去看看啊。你就是什么意思？什么？我出去看他会怎么样？我让那种感受，就是恐惧的感受，让它呼出来。那你不要跑，就豁出去了。
The question is, for me, the object of my fear is not a person. It's the whole world, the people outside. So I don't even dare to step out of my door. And Fashi's answer is, well, then you try and then let the fear come up and observe that and see what will happen. Try not to run away from it.
就是你出去以后，你门开出去以后，然后你不要压抑你那个恐惧心，然后你就是什么，你就放松你的身体。那他可能有恐惧的话，把你拉去了，你又放松，但是就是不压抑你的那恐惧的感觉，就让它豁出去，看要怎么样这样子。
So you open the door and then let all the fears come up. What you're trying to do is you're not going to try to suppress it, and just relax your body when all the fears come up and let it run, let it play out and see what would happen. And whenever it's so strong, it's overwhelming, relax your body.
就是你就是不要想要抓不恐惧就是说你就在恐惧当中，我就是跟你恐惧共存。
So you are not trying to grasp onto the phenomenon of no fear. That is not what you're going to aim for either. Instead, you are amidst of fear and just observe it and coexist with the fear.
这样可以吗？
法师，我第二
可以，很不好意思，现在已经11点20分了。法师那个对台湾应该非常晚了，我们原来是11点要结束的，所以是我们非常希望大家继续问题。
他的问题他可能还有一点点问题，等你说怎么样？
我的第二次情境的时候，我就是放着，我就看你能够让我到什么样程度的负面情绪，所以我那个第二次就很快的出来。可是当去年就是前年那时候进去的时候，我本来也是想用这个方法，可是没有办法，就是不晓得为什么就拖了1年多，我没有办法用之前那个方法，就被那个劲一直转。
没有你转，你就在转啊，你不要抓平静啊，你不要抓平静啊。
So I tried it once. And there's once I just did it and I just went ahead with it, let it run through its course. And I tried to, and I said to myself, well, see where you can take me. And that time it worked. I came out of that state relatively quickly. But then when it happened again recently, I tried it again, but I couldn't get out of it. I was stuck in it and I was turned upside down all over the place by the phenomenon, by the fear. I just couldn't get out. It didn't work this last time. Fashi's answer is don't try to grasp onto the phenomenon of no fear, of not being afraid. Just let the fear run through its course. Don't try to go for tranquility. You're not trying to grasp onto another set of phenomena.
这样可以吗？
先这样好了，法师耽误大家太多时间，感恩。
好。
Does this work for you? And the melody says, let's just end here for now. We're taking up too much time already. That's okay for now.
好。